All right, so we're going to wrap up community ecology here with the fourth part. And what I want you to do is, what the goal here is to pull together all of the concepts of community ecology and put it together into the Keystone species concept or idea. This is identifying the single species that plays the greatest role in maintaining diversity within the community. Start with defining the community, then pick the species. Do not say the trees. That's not a species. That's an entire ecological group. Which tree species is most important if you're going to pick a tree? Which mammal? So you wouldn't say, oh, I think the mammals in this picture are keystone. You have to pick a single species that you feel has the greatest impact on the ecosystem, maintaining the diversity within the ecosystem, and then defend it. That's the key, is you have to defend it with science. To defend it, you have to understand the life history of the species. Okay, so keystone species. The species, I'm putting it in capital, that plays the greatest role in maintaining the, oh, I gotta spell plays right, maintaining the biodiversity of the community. Now, what the keystone is will change and vary from community to community. There is no single species that encompasses all communities. Ignore humans. Take us out of this equation. Yes, we are incredibly important. We play a significant role, but I want you to think about natural communities, not human influenced and human induced communities, right? So the example, and we will come back to this more when we get into conservation, the conservation biology chapter. This is for those of you interested in ecology, environmental science, that type of field. This is a core part of those fields and those subdisciplines. And as you move on into upper level courses, this is where you will get more in depth about keystone species and succession and things like that. Anyway, let's think about a wolf. Yellowstone Park. This is a beautiful example, but a horrible experience of how science did not understand the importance of keystone species. So when wolves existed in the park, they played an incredibly important role. Back in the 1940s, 50s, all the wolves were eliminated. Actually, by the late or mid 1920s, officially all residential wolves were gone from Yellowstone. They were wiped out. They were shot and killed and poisoned and trapped. So then you think about the ecological niche of the wolf. Wolves eat lots of things. They're top-level carnivores. Wolves eat elk. Wolves eat rabbits. Wolves eat squirrels. Wolves eat mice. Wolves eat etc. But if you take out the wolf, you take out the pressure and the thing that controls the population growth of things like elk and rabbits and deer and all these other animals. So you've removed a limiting factor from the elk. That causes the elk population to go up. Now, what do elk eat? Well, elk are herbivores. They eat aspen, they eat willows, they eat all sorts of vegetation. So now with a greater population of elk, because there's no wolves, the aspen go down. Their population decreases because there's greater predation and a larger elk population eating the aspen. What do aspen do? Well, they're photosynthesizers, but they also hold in the soil of a stream bank. Now you wipe out the aspen and the stream bank destabilizes. So now your water quality changes because your stream is eroding, you get big rains, more sediment enters a stream, and that sediment level impacts things like trout that live in your stream. Decreased water quality means the trout population goes down. Decreased stream bank stabilization means lots of your songbird populations go down. All of these things occurred because of one species right here being removed from that community. So that is the lesson we learned from Yellowstone. Don't mess with the Keystone. You have to start with understanding the parameters of the community and then identifying the Keystone. And you do not mess with it. It's like going into your basement, finding the wall that supports your house and knocking it out. You're going to have major problems. You took out the structural component to your whole house. That is just unwise. So mid-90s, 95, 96, wolves were reintroduced back into the park. Stabilization started to occur. Populations started to level out. Species that had been gone for 70 years started coming back to the park. Diversity increased. Stream banks stabilized. It has not gone back to what it was in the 1800s, early 1900s. It's not recovered that much, but it is significantly improved and recovered because of the reintroduction of the wolves. Now, it's a very controversial topic. Again, this is a lot more conservation biology. We'll get into that in a couple lectures. But you have a lot of dynamics at play here. You have to look at it from the scientific side, but then you also have to look at it from the public side. Does everybody want wolves back in the park? Some groups absolutely support that, are in favor, and are saying, yes, bring them back. Other groups, no. So you have to find that balancing act. You have to figure out, how do we keep as many groups as possible happy and we keep a stable ecosystem. So that's just a snapshot in the US. We can see the same challenge in our own backyards with deer and bobcat hunting and all sorts of things in Illinois. Let's look at the ocean. Sharks, great whites, tigers, etc. These are the keystone species in the ocean. Yet we kill millions of sharks a year. And if you guys remember, sharks are part of chondrichthyes. Think about their life history. They only give birth to one or two young, sometimes one, live birth to one offspring every so many years. How many years does it take for a shark to mature? Not a lot of biotic potential. Yet if we remove 1 million of them a year, we're destroying the ocean's ecosystem. We're collapsing the biological connections in the ocean's ecosystem. Go down to Central America, jaguars. Jaguars are the rainforest keystone species. These guys maintain the biodiversity of the rainforest, yet we're pushing them to an endangered status. So some of the research I'm doing in Belize is looking at the importance of the jaguars and how they help maintain that biodiversity. So we have to have a better understanding of this. So as humans, as we make decisions on changing ecosystems, whether it's through urban or agricultural development or climate change, how are we impacting these communities? And ultimately, what we do to a community comes back to impact all of us. So the Yellowstone example, oh, this is great. We can hunt elk because there's elk everywhere. Well, the fishermen were not happy because their streams became full of sediment, their trout populations collapsed, and they couldn't fish. Bird watchers weren't happy. And that's what I mentioned earlier, trying to balance it out to make as many people as happy as possible while maintaining as healthy of an ecosystem as possible. All right, so as we move into conservation, we're going to come back to community ecology and population ecology, and all these things we've talked about, they all build together to lead up to community or to conservation biology and ways in which we try to figure out how to maintain this biodiversity. So we'll get into that in future lectures.